The Founding. Inquisitor Salvius Rolan of the Imperial Inquisition had just received a small package, wrapped loosely in brown paper and stamped closed with the Imperial seal. He carefully opened the package. A servo skull slowly rose from the box, its squid-like wires trailing from the depths. It regarded him for a second, a blood-red light blinking on and off. Salvius heard a faint beep, and it began to relay a message.
"You're being sent to Arcona."
The grating robotic voice began to rasp through a small rusty speaker.
"There is talk of activity relating to the dark gods of chaos. You and a small company of Grey Knights will have to drop onto the planet and attempt to close a warp portal used by the ruinous powers. You must not fail."
And with that, the servo skull sparked for a second and then fell with a dull thud into the box. Pneumatic hiss of the Thunderhawk sounded as its ceramite legs touched the ravaged soil of Arcona. The proud warriors of the Grey Knights chapter disembarked, surrounding Salvius Rolan. They were greeted by an ultramarine, clad in deep blue armour, malevolent red eyes shining out of his helm.
"Greetings, brothers."
His voice was distorted through his helmet speaker.
"Welcome to Arcona. As I'm sure you are aware, we have a rather serious problem with the ruinous powers of chaos. You have been drafted in as a final attempt to rid this world of the Chaos Scourge."
A faint smile cracked the surface of Inquisitor Salvius' scarred, withered face.
"I shall do my duty to the Eternal Emperor."
He put pressure on his ceramite boot and crushed the helmet of a dead traitor marine underfoot.
"Death to the traitors,"
he muttered under his breath. Inquisitor Salvius Rolan held the Aquila in his armoured glove. He looked at the two-headed eagle. He felt pride and honour, the need to instill justice throughout the galaxy. He placed it deep within his armour, close to his heart. He drew a bolter from his waist and threaded a clip of ammunition into the feed. He looked out from behind the Thunderhawk to see a horde of daemons charging towards him. Sickening sights to behold, twisted, perverted things. Among their ranks stood the traitor marines, sick beings beyond belief. Dark horns protruded from crimson helmets, a sickly pus leaking from the tips. They shrieked a battle cry. The sound of it made Salvius weep, but not from the pitch of the sound.
"Death to the false Emperor."
Salvius leapt out from behind the Thunderhawk and let the bolter do its work. Highly explosive shells thudded into the monsters, burning the Emperor's fury into their carcasses. Already twisted beyond imagination, the daemons were torn apart, gaping holes rent in unprotected flesh. A weird creature slipped through the lines, feminine in form, but different in many ways. Long, crab-like appendages ended where hands should be, its flaccid skin a pale mauve. Its hair shone iridescently, trailing out behind it. It charged at him, its spindly sharp teeth poised to tear at his throat. The foul abomination was obviously parodying humans. Salvius could not allow that to happen. The creature raised its claw, ready to strike at Salvius, but he drew his chainsword quick as a flash. He pressed the activation rune and thrust it into the daemon's chest. It screamed. Purple blood soared from the wound, showering Salvius with gunk. The daemon reached forward with its crab claw and tried to get at his throat. He wrenched free the chainsword and cut off the claw. It fell to the blackened ground, twitching, but the daemon would not die. It once again attacked with its other claw, pockmarked and textured, the blades as deadly as scythes. It went this time for a link in his ceramite armour, a leg joint. It forced its claws further in, its teeth helplessly rubbing his armour plating. He drove the sword deep into its skull. Grey matter splurged out of the gash. The soft meat of its body fell to the ground. The daemon was dead, but that wasn't the end of the battle, by a long shot. He looked up again, and the traitor marines were charging towards him. Now bereft of their weaker demon allies, the Emperor's might would protect him. He had won the great honour of bearing power armour, despite being only an Inquisitor. He rushed at the traitorous scum, bolter blazing. The shots ricocheted off their power armour, leaving ugly scars in the paintwork. He grinned. The defilers had become the defiled. He dodged under the sweeping chainsword of one of the enemy and swung his into its back. He wrenched it free, bringing the blood-soaked wretch to its knees. A Grey Knight swept his long scythe down, decapitating the freak of nature. He drew himself up, offering a brief moment of thanks to the Space Marine before turning to the face of the incoming tide of chaos.
How are we supposed to close the gate?
The voice of a Grey Knight buzzed electronically in his visor. Salvius pressed a small button on his helmet.
We have to throw a frag grenade into the portal and send a prayer to the Emperor. After that, we just slaughter the stragglers.
A traitor marine came bounding towards them, chainsword roaring. A Grey Knight swung his nemesis force halberd, catching the traitor in the stomach, and sent him doubling up. A second Grey Knight finished him off with a bolter round through the skull. They cut down their remaining foes and rushed to the portal.
The ruinous powers don't forge their portals in very well hidden locations.
Salvius voiced his concern.
Are they just cocky, or is there some deeper reason?
A Grey Knight replied,
I'm sure the Emperor has just blessed us with an easy target.
They began to dash towards the portal. Salvius drew a frag grenade from his waist in one swift motion. He heard a loud thud and felt his heart lurch as he saw one of the Grey Knights had been shot in the leg. Damaging the pneumatics, it had paralysed his power armour and left him stranded. Salvius could not turn back. He had to finish the mission. They reached the gate and threw the grenade deep into the portal. The maelstrom swirled with rifts and eddies for a second before shrinking to a tiny dot. Standing immobile for a second, they watched transfixed. Suddenly, without warning, it expanded, and Salvius, along with 4 Grey Knights, was swallowed up. The last thing Salvius saw before being sucked into the warp was a traitor, putting a bolter round through the skull of his paralysed comrade. The carriage bumped and rocked on the uneven cobbled road. Adorned with gold fineries and ornate carvings, a vehicle of this richness and beauty was only reserved for the best of the best. Inside, on a silky embroidered cushion and riches beyond measure, sat the Emperor Karl Franz. In full knowledge that a Daemon invasion force was swarming from the north, he had joined a massive defence force, so as to direct the battle and boost morale. The carriage clunked to a halt. There sounded a soft knock at the door. "Come in," he told the knocker. His top general, Felix Alferink, pulled himself into the opposite seat. Anger gripped the Emperor Karl Franz's heart like an icy fist. "All of them?" he asked, appalled. "I'm afraid so, sir." "But they were our best warriors. How could they have butchered all of them?" "With some ease, sir. The ruinous powers are sometimes beyond comprehension." The Emperor Karl Franz withered in his seat. "How could they have taken out 50 demigryphs?" He was shocked. "We need new knights, Felix. Stronger, faster, deadlier." At those words, there was a terrible shudder, an awful ear-splitting roar. Felix brushed aside the golden curtains and saw a swirling maelstrom open up in the middle of the battlefield. He knew it sounded ridiculous, but he swore some knights fell out of it. Grey Knights. Inquisitor Salvius Roland fell, spinning out of the warp, landing with a sickening thud on hard earth, along with 4 Grey Knights. Their ceramite power armour left ugly scars in the landscape, as they had fallen from such a height. Salvius rose to his feet. He had to ward off the incoming tide of demons. Once again, picking up his bolter he began to mow down hordes of the unholy creatures. Bullets thudded into soft flesh belonging to the abominations. Only when he knew his blessed weapon was smiting the enemy, keeping them at a safe distance, did he begin to notice his surroundings. The Emperor Karl Franz looked on in astonishment. He and Felix had seen something drop from the swirling void of the portal, and now it was proving to be strong. Too far to see what it was, all Felix and the Emperor could see was a continual flash of yellow, and demons being forcefully knocked from what has ever served them as feet. "Felix," he said, his voice hoarse, "I think we have found our knights." Salbius stood, shocked, looking around, bolter still blazing. He began to wonder what in the name of the Eternal Emperor was going on. The sky, previously turned red with the filth and detritus of war, was now a peaceful blue. The ground, previously charred and blackened, now fresh, if not a bit trampled, grass. And most noticeably, in place of proud ultramarines and powerful machines of war, were odd-looking soldiers, some in odd approximations of power armour, but not airtight. Smooth, polished steel replaced ceramite, and there were large slits in the visors. Also, what looked like Astra Militarum, but with more primitive weapons, and wearing more garish combat uniforms. Feathers draped from their hats, and only a select few had what appeared to be very primitive lasguns. Fashioned crudely out of wood and metal, they didn't appear to have power packs. A jarring pulled Salbius from his observations. His bolter had jammed. Daemons began scrabbling over the corpses of their once comrades in arms. If demons had a concept of such things. He angrily bashed the weapon with an armoured glove, but it made little difference. He abandoned the bolter, instead drawing his power sword. He pressed the activation rune and began to carve his way through the creatures. He thrust the chainsword into the chest of one daemon, then whipped round so as to kill a second. The teeth of the weapon hummed as he slaughtered all those near him. He struck a third demon, carving a gash through its leg. A piece of bone got lodged in the teeth, temporarily jamming it, and he had to raise his boot to dislodge it, sliding the body of the daemon off of it at the same time. A particularly freakish thing took advantage of this distraction and leapt towards him, poised to strike. Salbius stared in horror, expecting the end, but the sparking tips of the Nemesis Force halberd struck the thing down just in time. He and his brothers in arms began smiting the foe in close quarters, hacking and slashing. Eventually, though, they were overrun and fell to the ground under a sea of bodies. Salbius lifted his head and looked around in astonishment. There were no daemons attacking. In fact, there was no one attacking. Two men stood over him. He wearily lifted his head.
"Who are you?"
he asked. "Are you Imperial?" The men looked uncertainly at each other. "Yes, we are Imperial,"
"Where am I?"
asked Salbius. "You are in the Empire lands, close to the Chaos Wastes. The year is 2256. You must have taken quite a fall to forget that." Salbius looked at him, unsure if he was telling the truth or just insane. "Who are you?" the men asked.
"I am Salbius Rolan of the Imperial Inquisition. I come from the year M41.756.
The truth hit him like an icy bomb. He was back in time, in a different place. The Emperor wasn't even in existence.
"But the Emperor, he isn't even around,"
he muttered half to himself. "What do you mean?" one of the men asked. "I am the Emperor Karl Franz." Salbius felt as if being hit in the chest with a Nemesis false halberd. This was a different Emperor, a previous Emperor, his only ticket out of this mess alive. He reached for his spare bolt pistol, but found it missing. Worried, he reached for his chainsword. Nothing. "We have your weapons," said the Emperor. "They are alien to us. Are they magic or mechanical?"
Magic?
echoed Salbius, confused.
I have no concept of such things,
He said. "But me and my Grey Knight brothers here need to work out how to return home." The men looked awkward. "Your battle brothers all died. You're the only survivor. I am sorry." Salbius was horrified. "Your armour is of strange design. How does it operate?" Salbius wasn't in the mood for questions. He lay down and wept for his fallen brothers, blind to the outside world. Salbius woke with a start, realising he had dozed off. He looked up, and what he beheld filled him with anger and dread. The Emperor Karl Franz had removed the power armour of one of the Grey Knights and put it on himself. "Hey," he called, burning with rage. "That is power armour, to be worn by Adeptus Astartes only. You are giving my fallen brother a great dishonour by wearing his armour." "Don't get so worried," said the Emperor defensively. "We have different customs here in the Empire. Plus, I have all your weapons." He fought to hold back a tear and went on collecting the gene seeds of his fallen brethren. "On a more pleasant note," the Emperor began, "I can get you home. One of our top sorcerers can open a gate to the warp and send you back to your own time." He remained silent, allowing the process to take shape around him. A man in a long robe began chanting strange incantations, and a blip appeared in the air. Growing, a warp gate appeared. Salbius stepped through, knowing full well the horrors that lurked in the warp. Suddenly, and without warning, the Emperor jumped in after him, and they were gone. Over the next few years, Salbius looked after the Emperor. Due to poor warp calculations, they had manifested in the year 30,000. Salbius watched as Karl Franz ascended to Emperor of Mankind. Anguish gripped his heart. He had devoted his life to destroying chaos, but without it, without the power of the warp, the Emperor could never have come forward to this age. He raised a bolt gun to his temple and pulled the trigger.